Angela Hammond, Clinton, Missouri. April 4th, 1991. Angela Hammond was a 20-year-old small-town woman with a life on the cusp of change. She was engaged to her high school sweetheart, Rob Schaefer. She was 4 months pregnant. She worked at a local bank, lived with her mother, and had plans to start a family of her own. Clinton was a quiet community, a place where people left their doors unlocked, a place where things like this didn't happen. That Thursday night started out unremarkably. Angela spent the evening at a friend's house, just catching up, laughing, sharing gossip the way young women do. Around 11:15 p.m., she left to drop her friend off at home and headed toward the center of town. She planned to call Rob from a payphone to let him know she'd be home soon. She stopped at the payphone outside a convenience store on Jefferson Street. It was a spot everyone in town recognized, a single phone lit by a harsh, flickering bulb. Angela dialed Rob. It was now about 11:22 p.m. On the other end of the line, Rob heard his fiancée's voice, casual and easy at first. She talked about her day. But then, something changed. Angela told Rob about a suspicious truck circling the parking lot. A green Ford pickup with a decal of a fish jumping out of water on the back window. She said the man driving it looked odd, almost out of place. He parked next to her car, got out, and started searching the lot with a flashlight, as if looking for something. Rob urged Angela to stay calm but cautious. As she continued talking, Rob could hear the unease rising in her voice. Suddenly, she gasped. She told Rob, "He's back." And then, the line went dead. What happened next would haunt Clinton for decades. Rob Schaefer immediately jumped in his car and sped toward the payphone, less than 2 miles away. As he raced through the empty streets, he saw a pickup truck matching Angela's description coming toward him. He glimpsed a driver and, just possibly, a woman struggling in the passenger seat. Rob did what any desperate young man would do. He pulled a U-turn and gave chase. But fate intervened. Just a block into the pursuit, Rob's transmission failed. The truck vanished into the night, taking Angela Hammond with it. The town of Clinton would never be the same. Police arrived quickly. They found Angela's car at the payphone, the engine still running, her purse inside, her belongings scattered. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood. The witness was the telephone receiver left dangling, Angela's last lifeline, now silent. Detectives canvassed the area, collecting every possible detail. Several witnesses recalled seeing the same Ford pickup truck in the area, described the decal on the window, but nobody knew the driver. The investigation went into overdrive. The entire region was blanketed with flyers. Police interviewed anyone who owned a similar vehicle. A composite sketch was created from Rob's memory. An older, scruffy white man, glasses, baseball cap. Rob was grilled for hours, but his alibi was ironclad, and his story never changed. Angela's family was left in agony. Her mother, Marcia in particular, became a driving force for answers. Over the years, theories abounded. Some suspected Angela was the victim of a serial predator. Others speculated her case was linked to 2 other unsolved disappearances in Missouri from that era. But no evidence ever surfaced to connect the dots. The Ford truck with the fish decal was never found. No trace of Angela Hammond has ever been recovered. Clinton, Missouri still carries the weight of that April night. The payphone is long gone, but the questions remain. Angela Hammond's case is a chilling reminder of how quickly an ordinary night can become an enduring mystery. And after more than 3 decades, her voice on the payphone still echoes, unfinished, unanswered, and unforgotten. John Benet Ramsey, Boulder, Colorado, December 26, 1996. Christmas night had fallen softly over Boulder, a city nestled in the foothills of the Rockies, dusted white with snow and twinkling with holiday lights. Inside the sprawling Ramsey home, a grand 3-story house on 15th Street, 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was tucked into bed. She was a child who seemed born for the spotlight, a pageant queen, radiant on stage, with a smile that could melt the coldest day. Her family, John and Patsy Ramsey, and her older brother Burke, had just celebrated a festive Christmas Eve. Gifts had been opened, laughter had echoed, and life, by all appearances, was perfect. But perfection is a fragile illusion. In the early morning hours of December 26th, Patsy Ramsey awoke and went downstairs to the kitchen. There, on a back staircase, she discovered something that would shatter her world, a handwritten ransom note sprawling across 3 pages. The message claimed JonBenet had been kidnapped, demanded $118,000 for her safe return, and warned the family not to call the police. But Patsy did call the police. At 5:52 a.m., the Boulder Police Department received the frantic 911 call. Officers arrived within minutes. The house was soon filled with law enforcement, friends, and neighbors, all searching for signs of the missing child. But something was off. There was no forced entry. The note was oddly theatrical, using phrases reminiscent of popular movies. And the ransom sum. It matched John Ramsey's recent work bonus almost exactly. Detectives began piecing together a timeline. The last anyone had seen JonBenet was the night before, fast asleep in her room. Her parents, in shock, tried to comply with the ransom note's instructions, but as hours passed with no further contact from the supposed kidnappers, panic gave way to dread. Just after 1 p.m., John Ramsey made a heartbreaking discovery. Searching the basement with a friend, he found JonBenet's body hidden in a little used storage room. She had been covered with a white blanket, a cord wrapped around her neck, tape over her mouth. The beauty queen was gone. The Ramseys' cries of anguish echoed through the house and into the heart of a nation. Boulder police now had a homicide, not a kidnapping. But the scene had already been compromised. Dozens of people had wandered through the house. Evidence had been moved. Still, detectives combed the basement for clues. They found signs of a violent struggle. Blunt force trauma to the head, evidence of strangulation. A paintbrush from Patsy's art supplies had been used to fashion a garrote. Yet there were almost no signs of an intruder, no footprints in the snow, no broken windows, no evidence of a break-in. The investigation soon turned inward. Suspicion fell heavily on the Ramseys. Some believed Patsy had written the ransom note herself. Others scrutinized the family's behavior, calm in the face of tragedy, unwilling to cooperate fully with police. Interviews. But the evidence was murky. DNA found under JonBenet's fingernails and on her clothing did not match anyone in the family. The handwriting on the note was inconclusive, and young Burke Ramsey was cleared after interviews with child psychologists. Years passed. The case was scrutinized by the media, dissected by amateur sleuths, and endlessly debated on talk shows and documentaries. The Boulder police, criticized for their early mistakes, cycled through investigators and theories. A grand jury convened but failed to indict. In 2008, the family was officially cleared by the district attorney, but public doubt lingered. To this day, the slaying of JonBenet Ramsey remains unsolved. Her pink bedroom, frozen in time, became a symbol of innocence lost and justice denied. In the quiet of Boulder, the question echoes, who took the life of the little girl in the Christmas pageant? And why, after all these years, does the truth still hide in the shadows of a home once filled with light? Relisha Rudd, Washington, D.C., March 2014. In the heart of the nation's capital, beneath the marble monuments and historic facades, 8-year-old Relisha Rudd was living a childhood hidden from view. Relisha's world was the D.C. General Homeless Shelter, a sprawling, aging hospital complex that had been converted into a shelter for hundreds of families with nowhere else to go. She was a bright, energetic girl, her hair neatly braided, her smile quick to appear, even as life's hardships pressed in. Relisha's mother, Shamika Young, struggled to provide stability. Her family bounced between relatives, shelters, and uncertainty. But Relisha, by all accounts, remained cheerful, a little girl who loved school and looked out for her younger brothers. By late winter 2014, something was already wrong. Relisha stopped showing up at Payne Elementary School. Teachers noticed her growing absences, but the notes explaining her disappearance seemed legitimate, signed by Dr. Tatum, said to be caring for Relisha while she was sick. But Dr. Tatum was no doctor. Khalil Tatum was a 51-year-old janitor at the shelter, a man who'd befriended Relisha's family. He'd given her gifts, tablets, dolls, trips to the pool, and he'd been allowed to spend time alone with her. To school staff and social workers, he was just a helpful adult, a face they'd seen around. No one realized how much time Relisha was spending in his company, or how vulnerable she truly was. March 19, 2014. After weeks of absence, a social worker finally came looking for Relisha. When school officials tried to contact Dr. Tatum, they were told no one by that name worked at any area hospital. Concern became panic. By the time authorities were notified, Relisha had not been seen in nearly 3 weeks. The search began with urgency. Police visited the shelter, interviewed Shamika, and retraced Relisha's last known movements. Surveillance footage showed Relisha with Tatum at a Holiday Inn Express in Northeast D.C., just days before she vanished. They left together. Relisha was never seen again. Khalil Tatum's past quickly came into focus. He had a criminal record, including burglary and larceny. As investigators pressed in, they found his wife, Andrea Tatum, shot to death in a Maryland motel room, an apparent slaying suicide. Khalil Tatum was now the prime suspect in Relisha's disappearance, but he too would soon be found dead in a city park, his life ended by his own hand. The case, just days old, had already lost its only living suspect. And Relisha, the child at the center of it all, was nowhere to be found. Investigators scoured D.C.'s parks, rivers, abandoned buildings. The city was blanketed with flyers. Community members and strangers joined in, desperate for any sign. But no solid evidence ever surfaced. No clothing, no personal items, no trace. The questions multiplied. How could a child disappear so completely in a city filled with cameras, law, enforcement, and watchful eyes? How could so many adults, systems, and institutions fail to see the danger until it was too late? Years have now passed since Relisha Rudd vanished. Her face is still posted on missing children's lists. The shelter where she once lived has been shuttered. But the ache remains, a silent indictment of a city and a system that allowed a little girl to slip through the cracks. In the end, Relisha Rudd's story is more than a cold case. It is a haunting reminder of the children who disappear, not just from sight, but from the conscience of the places they call home. And it is a question that lingers over Washington, D.C. What became of Relisha Rudd, and how could a city lose a child in plain sight? Brianna Maitland, March 19, 2004, Montgomery, Vermont. In the far northern reaches of Vermont, nestled against the mountains and rolling fields, 17-year-old Brianna Maitland was finding her way through a difficult season of life. The winter was still holding on, snow thick on the ground, and Brianna, newly independent, was balancing school, 2 jobs, and the strains of her fractured family. Brianna was bright and artistic, with a sly sense of humor and dreams of something bigger. But beneath the surface, friends noticed she seemed distracted, troubled by recent events and people in her orbit. Still, she kept pushing forward. On Friday, March 19th, she spent the day running errands with her mother, then dropped her off at home. Brianna said she had to get ready for her evening shift at the Black Lantern Inn, just a few miles away in the village of Montgomery. She arrived for work at 3:30 p.m. and finished her shift around 11:20 that night. Brianna told her co-workers she was heading home to get some sleep before a weekend with friends. She left alone, stepping out into the cold Vermont night. That was the last time anyone ever saw her. The next morning, a scene straight from a mystery novel greeted passing motorists. Along a lonely stretch of Route 118, the headlights of a faded green 1985 Oldsmobile jutted out from an abandoned farmhouse known locally as the Old Dutchburn House. The car had backed into the weathered siding, glass and debris scattered. Inside, Brianna's belongings, her wallet, cash, medication, and even 2 paychecks sat untouched. A loose necklace and some clothes were strewn on the ground outside. No one thought much of the car at first. In rural Vermont, a vehicle left at an abandoned house wasn't rare. Several passers-by even snapped photos, assuming it belonged to trespassers. But as hours turned to days and Brianna didn't turn up, her family became alarmed. On March 23rd, 4 days after she vanished, police finally connected the car to Brianna Maitland. The investigation launched with urgency. Police combed the farmhouse, fields, and dense woods for signs of a struggle. Search dogs picked up her scent, but it faded quickly in the cold. There was no blood, no obvious evidence of violence, but also no sign that Brianna had left on her own. Detectives began piecing together her last days. Brianna had recently moved out of her mother's house and was staying with friends. She'd told others about tension with people in her social circle, rumors of fights, jealousy, and even threats. Some speculated she'd planned to meet someone that night. Others whispered about possible ties to local drug activity. But no theory could explain the abandoned car, angled eerily against the old farmhouse wall. Leads came and went. Witnesses recalled seeing Brianna's car parked at the house as early as 12:30 a.m. on March 20th, just an hour after she left work. Others remembered a pair of headlights nearby, or a pale figure, standing by the trunk. But nothing concrete emerged. The case quickly gained national attention, drawing comparisons to the then recent disappearance of Maura Murray in neighboring New Hampshire. But despite search teams, interviews, and thousands of tips, Brianna Maitland seemed to have vanished without a trace. Years passed. Brianna's family never stopped searching. Her mother in particular became a tireless advocate, organizing searches and keeping Brianna's face in the media. Investigators revisited every angle, including possible foul play, abduction, and even voluntary disappearance. In 2022, new DNA testing was conducted on evidence from the scene, but so far, results have not led to answers. Today, the old Dutchburn house stands in ruins, its weathered boards a silent witness to one of Vermont's most haunting mysteries. The car is gone, the case remains open, and Brianna Maitland's name lingers in the cold Vermont air, a reminder of how easily a young woman can vanish and how desperately a family waits for answers. Mary Shotwell Little, Atlanta, Georgia. October 14th, 1965. The city was humming that evening, its neon signs flickering to life as office workers spilled into the streets. Mary Shotwell Little, a 25-year-old secretary at the Citizens and Southern Bank, was among them. Mary was newly married just 6 weeks into life with her husband, Roy Little, who worked out of town. That Thursday night, she had plans, a dinner with a co-worker at Lenox Square Shopping Center, one of Atlanta's bustling new malls. Mary was known for her cheerful nature and neat appearance. She dressed well, wore her hair in the fashionable 1960s style, and rarely made waves. Friends described her as kind, responsible, and a little bit shy. After dinner with her friend, Mary mentioned she was tired but lingered in the parking lot, chatting before heading to her car, a metallic gray Mercury Comet. She told her friend she'd see her at work in the morning, then stepped into the night. Mary was never seen again. The next day, Mary didn't show up for work. Her supervisor called her husband, and together they raised the alarm. Atlanta police were brought in quickly. That afternoon, her car was found in the Lenox Square parking lot. The doors were locked, the driver's seat adjusted for someone of Mary's height. Inside, investigators found Mary's purse, shopping bags, and uneaten groceries, but her keys were missing. But there was more. Bloodstains were smeared across the driver's seat, on Mary's underwear, and on a pair of stockings discarded nearby. A single pair of Mary's gloves lay on the ground, as if dropped in haste. In a time before DNA analysis, these traces offered little but dread. Detectives began piecing together the last known movements of Mary Shotwell Little. Witnesses gave conflicting accounts. Some recalled seeing her leaving with a well-dressed man. Others claimed they saw a woman fitting Mary's description in the parking lot much later, around midnight, looking disoriented and accompanied by an unknown male. One witness claimed to have seen Mary in a nearby gas station early the next morning, but those details were never confirmed. Days passed. Then, a strange twist. Mary's bank credit card was used twice, once in Charlotte, North Carolina, and once in Raleigh, just hours after her disappearance. Receipts showed her signature, but the handwriting looked shaky, and witnesses at the gas stations remembered a woman who seemed anxious, traveling with two men. The trail ended there. Investigators probed Mary's personal life. Her marriage was still new, but rumors of tension between Mary and Roy emerged. Yet nothing concrete connected Roy to the case, and he passed repeated polygraph tests. Detectives considered every theory: kidnapping, abduction by someone she knew, even voluntary disappearance, but nothing fit perfectly. Over the years, new details occasionally surfaced, but never enough to solve the mystery. Some wondered if Mary had been targeted by someone at her workplace, as a handful of co-workers reported receiving strange phone calls around the time she vanished. Others suspected a serial predator. In the years following Mary's disappearance, another young woman from her office was slain under mysterious circumstances. Despite exhaustive investigation and countless hours of police work, Mary Shotwell Little's fate remains one of Atlanta's most haunting cold cases. Her disappearance left a void in the lives of those who loved her, a newlywed husband, grieving family, and co-workers who never stopped asking questions. The Lenox Square parking lot is busy as ever, but for those who remember October 1965, it's a place forever marked by absence. More than half a century later, the question still lingers in Atlanta's air. What happened to Mary Shotwell Little that autumn night, and how could a woman vanish so completely from a crowded city, leaving only silence and a few drops of blood behind? Phoenix Colden, St. Louis County, Missouri, December 18, 2011. It was a cold Sunday afternoon, and the holidays were just days away. In the quiet suburb of Spanish Lake, 23-year-old Phoenix Colden seemed restless. A talented musician, champion fencer, and deeply religious, Phoenix was a young woman caught between childhood and independence. She still lived at home with her parents, Goldia and Lawrence, but her world was changing. Lately, she'd seemed distant, her smile faded, her phone conversations private, and her daily routines a little more secretive. That day, Phoenix spent the afternoon at home, reportedly watching television with her mother. At around 3 p.m., she slipped on her black hoodie, grabbed her car keys, and told her parents she was going out for a drive. She climbed into her black 1998 Chevy Blazer and backed out of the driveway. She left without her glasses, purse, or even her phone charger, details her mother would recall again and again. The Blazer rolled down the street, and Phoenix Colden was gone. Hours ticked by. Evening fell. Goldia and Lawrence waited for their daughter to return, but as midnight approached, dread crept in. Their calls to her cell phone went unanswered. It wasn't like Phoenix to vanish without a word. The next morning, the Coldens called the police, but hope was already fading. At 5:27 p.m. the day before, just hours after Phoenix left home, her Chevy Blazer was found abandoned in East St. Louis, Illinois, only about 25 minutes from her house. The car was still idling, driver's door open, engine running. Inside sat Phoenix's purse, ID, and shoes. Her keys and cell phone were missing. The location was a rough neighborhood, unfamiliar and dangerous, a place Phoenix had no known ties to. Investigators arrived, but the car was towed before detectives could process it for evidence, costing them precious time. There were no witnesses, no surveillance footage, and no signs of a struggle, only a lone vehicle left in haste. Detectives quickly learned that Phoenix had been living a double life. While she presented herself as a sheltered, church-going daughter at home, Phoenix maintained a secret world online. She used aliases, maintained private Facebook profiles, and communicated with friends her parents had never met. She may have even been dating without her parents' knowledge, yet nothing uncovered by police explained her sudden disappearance. Tips came in from across the country. Some believed Phoenix may have left to start a new life. Her car's keys and cell phone were never found. Others speculated she fell victim to foul play, possibly abducted after leaving her car or coerced by someone she trusted. But every lead, sightings in California, rumors of human trafficking, even claims that Phoenix had joined a religious group led nowhere. Search efforts, flyers, and community rallies turned up nothing. Her family was left with only questions. Years passed and the case grew colder. Her mother, Goldia, became the public face of the search, never giving up hope, clinging to the belief that Phoenix is still alive somewhere. The family hired private investigators, appeared on television, and even consulted psychics. But the truth remained elusive. Today, the story of Phoenix Colden stands as one of St. Louis's most bewildering mysteries. The idling Chevy Blazer, left on a quiet street in East St. Louis, is a silent witness to a young woman's vanishing. There were no goodbyes, no note, no answers. Just a single moment in time, one that split a family's life in two. And in the shadows of two cities, a question hangs in the winter air. What really happened to Phoenix Colden? And how does a young woman disappear in the space between home and the unknown, leaving only an empty car and a trail gone cold? Amber Tuckero. August 18, 2010, Nisku, Alberta, Canada. Amber Tuckero was just 20 years old, a proud member of the Mikisew Cree First Nation and a devoted young mother to her 14-month-old son, Jacob. She had a bright smile, big dreams, and was always quick to help family. Amber was visiting Edmonton with her son and a friend, excited for a change of pace, looking forward to a new chapter. That Wednesday, the group checked into a motel in Nisku, a rural community just outside the city. Late in the afternoon, Amber told her friend she wanted to go into Edmonton. She left Jacob with her friend and accepted a ride from an unknown man. She was last seen climbing into a vehicle, not knowing her every step would soon become the heart of one of Canada's most chilling cold cases. When Amber didn't return that night, her friend quickly grew concerned. The next day, Amber's family called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to report her missing. But the urgency wasn't matched. RCMP told her mother, Vivian, to wait 24 hours, suggesting Amber was probably out partying. Precious time slipped away. Days turned into weeks. The family's pleas intensified, but the investigation stalled. Flyers went up, media attention grew, but leads remained scarce. Amber's mother pushed authorities, refusing to let her daughter's case be ignored, and her persistence forced a critical breakthrough. 2 years after Amber vanished, RCMP made a public appeal unlike any before. They released a 61-second audio recording, the only known clue to Amber's fate. On the tape, Amber's voice is heard, tense but composed, questioning the driver who picked her up. The man tries to reassure her, but Amber's doubt is clear. "You better not be taking me anywhere I don't want to go," Amber says. "You're going to the city," the man replies, his voice calm, steady, almost casual. Amber presses him for details, her suspicion growing as the car winds down unfamiliar roads. The chilling exchange suggests Amber knew something was wrong, but it was already too late. To this day, the driver's identity remains a mystery. The audio release generated hundreds of tips, but none led to Amber. Her family continued searching, organizing walks and rallies, keeping her memory alive in the pressure on police. Then, in September 2012, a grim discovery was made. Hikers found partial human remains in a wooded area near Leduc County, just miles from where Amber was last seen. Dental records confirmed what the family had feared. Amber Tuckero had been found, but justice was still out of reach. Investigators classified her case as a homicide, but the investigation itself came under fire. A 2018 inquiry revealed critical missteps by the RCMP, including delays in opening the case, lost evidence, and mishandled leads. Amber's family was forced to relive the pain as the public learned just how badly the investigation had failed her. The driver on the tape was never identified, and the circumstances of Amber's final hours remain unknown. But her mother's voice, unyielding and determined, has kept the case in the national spotlight, fighting for answers not just for Amber, but for all missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. Years later, Amber Tuckero's legacy is more than a cold case. Her story is a call for justice, a lesson in the consequences of inaction, and a voice that will not fade. The 61 seconds of recorded fear and courage are a haunting reminder of how quickly a life can be taken and how desperately a family waits for the truth. In the fields near Nisku, the wind carries a question that still has no answer. Who was the man in the car with Amber Tuckero, and will her final words ever lead to justice? Melanie Hall. June 8, 1996. Bath, England. Melanie Hall was 25 years old, a bright, hard-working graduate with a gentle smile and dreams of building a life in healthcare. She had recently started a job as a clerical worker at the Royal United Hospital, not far from her childhood home. By all accounts, Melanie was dependable, warm, and well-loved by friends and family. She had a steady boyfriend, and on this particular night, she just wanted to relax and dance. That Saturday, Melanie joined friends for an evening out in Bath, a city famous for its Roman baths and historic streets. The group went to Cadillac's nightclub, a popular spot bustling with music and young people seeking escape in the neon-lit hours between dusk and dawn. Inside, the mood was lively. Melanie, dressed in a black dress and high heels, laughed with friends and her boyfriend, enjoying the pulse of the dance floor. As the night wore on, the crowd thickened and tempers frayed. Around 1:10 a.m., Melanie and her boyfriend reportedly argued. He left the club. Melanie stayed, lingering on a bar stool near the entrance. Just after 2 a.m., witnesses recall seeing her for the last time, seated alone, quietly waiting as the club began to empty. And then, Melanie Hall vanished. Sunday morning arrived, and Melanie did not return home. Her parents grew concerned. Calls to her friends turned up nothing. No one had seen her leave, and no one remembered her getting into a taxi or walking off into the night. Bath was a safe city, but the fear was instant. The police were contacted, and a massive search began. Detectives scoured the city. CCTV footage was limited. There were no clear images of Melanie after she left the club, and the grainy cameras outside provided few clues. Officers spoke to doormen, taxi drivers, patrons, anyone who might have seen a young woman alone at closing time. Flyers with Melanie's face papered Bath's lampposts and bus stops. Her disappearance made headlines, but there were no solid leads. The investigation widened. Rumors swirled about men seen lurking near the club that night, cars idling at the curb, strangers offering lifts. Police questioned known offenders in the region and even followed up on reports of similar abductions. Nothing panned out. Melanie's family waited in agony, refusing to give up hope. But days became weeks, and weeks became years. Then, 13 years later, in October 2009, a grim discovery was made. A workman clearing brush off the northbound slip road of the M5 motorway near Thornbury, about 25 miles from Bath, found human remains. Forensic testing soon confirmed what many feared. Melanie Hall had finally been found. Her remains were discovered wrapped in black bin bags, tied with blue rope. The location suggested she'd been left there not long after her disappearance, hidden just out of sight from passing cars. The way she was concealed pointed clearly to murder, but police kept many details private. The investigation was immediately reignited. Police scoured the site for clues and re-interviewed old witnesses. They released images of the blue rope and black bin bags, hoping someone would recall where they had been sold. Dozens of suspects were questioned over the years, and several men were arrested, but all were later released. DNA evidence was recovered from the crime scene, but it has never matched any profile in police databases. Today, the case remains open, the murder unsolved. Melanie's family continues to press for answers, their grief tempered only by hope for closure. The city of Bath remembers that lost night every time her story returns to the news. A young woman who vanished on a summer evening, leaving behind an empty bar stool and a trail that went cold for over a decade. And so, the question endures, echoing from the club doors to the motorway verge. Who took Melanie Hall from the safety of Bath's nightlife? And will the secret of her last moments ever come to light? Nicole Morin, Toronto, Canada, July 30th, 1985. It was the heart of summer, the kind of muggy Toronto morning when the city's high-rises shimmered in the heat. In a quiet apartment building on Etobicoke's busy Highway 427 corridor, 8-year-old Nicole Morin was looking forward to a simple childhood joy, a swim with her friend in the condo's rooftop pool. Nicole was a bright, bubbly girl, outgoing and polite, with a trademark gap-toothed smile and a love of adventure. She lived with her mother Jeanette in apartment 504. Her parents were divorced, but both remained active in her life. That Tuesday, Nicole woke up early, eager for her plans. She called her friend around 10:30 a.m. They agreed to meet in the lobby before heading upstairs to swim. Nicole's mother made her lunch and reminded her to be careful, as any mother would. At 11 a.m., Nicole pulled on her turquoise bathing suit, grabbed her orange beach bag, pink towel, and favorite purple plastic sandals. She kissed her mom goodbye and left the apartment, heading down the hallway toward the elevator. It was a short walk, less than 40 meters from the apartment to the elevator bay. But somewhere in that space, Nicole Morin simply vanished. Her friend waited by the pool. Minutes turned to half an hour, then an hour. When Nicole didn't appear, her friend assumed she'd been delayed. Meanwhile, Jeanette, not immediately worried, thought Nicole was still with friends. But by early afternoon, concern set in. Jeanette checked the pool and phoned neighbors, but no one had seen Nicole. At 3:00 p.m., she called the police. What followed was one of the largest missing child searches in Canadian history. Toronto police, joined by volunteers in the RCMP, scoured every inch of the 429-unit building and its surrounding grounds. Search dogs combed hallways and stairwells. Residents were interviewed. The building's doors had not been propped open. No screams were heard. No struggle was reported. No one saw Nicole after she left the apartment. She never made it to the lobby. Detectives worked around the clock, checking out every possible scenario. Nicole's parents were questioned and cleared. The family had no known enemies. The building was home to hundreds of people, many of them families, but also a steady stream of strangers and delivery drivers. Police canvassed the neighborhood, circulated flyers, and interviewed anyone who might have been passing by. One resident recalled seeing a man in the hallway that morning, a stranger, tall and dark-haired, wearing a white shirt and carrying a briefcase. But the sighting was fleeting, the description vague. The tip led nowhere. As days turned to weeks, the search broadened. Nicole's face was on every news broadcast, her school photos etched into the memory of a city. Police set up a command post in the building, following up on hundreds of leads, but each one ended in a dead end. The case was covered by national media. Her father appeared on television, pleading for her return. Over the years, the case never faded from public consciousness. Investigators revisited the building countless times, interviewed residents again and again, and followed up on possible sightings across Canada and even into the United States. All led to nothing. No evidence of abduction, no ransom note, no trace. Nicole's room in the Etobicoke apartment remained untouched for years, a small-time capsule filled with dolls, drawings, and a little girl's hopes for summer. Her mother, Jeanette, kept hope alive as long as she could, always believing Nicole might walk through the door. Nearly 4 decades later, Nicole Morin's disappearance remains a haunting mystery. There were no witnesses, no clues, no answers, just a walk down a hallway on a summer morning and a child who was never seen again. And so, Toronto is left with a single unyielding question. What happened to Nicole Morin between apartment 504 and the elevator? And how can someone disappear without a trace in the space of a few seconds? Jody Heisentrut, Mason City, Iowa, June 27, 1995. It was barely light when the phone rang in the newsroom at Kim TV. Jody Heisentrut, the station's 27-year-old morning anchor, hadn't arrived for her 6 a.m. broadcast. It was out of character. Jody was known for her punctuality, her bright on-air presence, and her genuine warmth. Her colleagues assumed she'd overslept. A producer called her at 4:10 a.m. Jody answered, apologetic and groggy, promising to be at the studio soon. She never made it. Jody's life had the sheen of early success. Originally from Minnesota, she was ambitious and driven, working her way up through small market newsrooms, hoping to eventually anchor in a major city. In Mason City, she lived alone in a modest apartment not far from the station. She was well liked in the community, a fixture at charity events and local sports. But in the days leading up to her disappearance, Jody confided in friends about feeling uneasy. She thought someone was following her. Her personal journal noted a sense of being watched. On that June morning, time ticked by at the station. Jody still hadn't arrived. At 7:00 a.m., a coworker drove to her apartment complex to check on her. Jody's red Mazda Miata was in the parking lot, but she was nowhere to be found. The scene outside her apartment told a troubling story. Jody's belongings, her high heels, hairdryer, earrings, and car keys were scattered around the car. The driver's seat was adjusted for her, and a bent car key lay nearby. Drag marks were visible in the dew-soaked grass. Neighbors reported hearing a scream just before sunrise, but saw nothing. There were no witnesses, no clear sign of where Jody had gone. Mason City police were called immediately. The search for Jody began in earnest. Detectives processed the parking lot for evidence, taking note of the disarray, personal items strewn on the ground, one of Jody's earrings torn from her ear, and the faint impressions of shoe prints and tire marks nearby. But there was no blood, no sign of forced entry into her car, and no helpful surveillance footage. The investigation quickly became national news. Friends, family, and volunteers scoured fields, riverbanks, and woodlands. Tips poured in from across the Midwest, but nothing led to Jody. Detectives looked at everyone in her orbit, co-workers, friends, acquaintances, even people she had dated. Some wondered about a local man who was reportedly obsessed with Jody. Others suspected a stranger might have been stalking her, lurking in the shadows that early morning. Despite hundreds of interviews and thousands of hours spent chasing leads, there were no arrests, no confirmed sightings, no ransom demands. Jody had simply disappeared between her front door and her car, in a small town where nothing like this ever happened. In the years that followed, the case remained in the public eye. Billboards, anniversary vigils, and national television specials kept Jody's face in the headlines. Mason City police continued to follow up on leads, and her family kept hope alive, refusing to let her memory fade. But more than 2 decades later, the questions persist. The parking lot where Jody vanished still sits quietly off Kentucky Avenue, and the city lives with the ache of an unsolved crime. What happened to the promising young anchor on her way to work? Who was watching Jody, and who silenced her voice before the morning news could begin? The disappearance of Jody Heisentrud remains one of Iowa's most enduring mysteries, a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can turn to tragedy, and how, even in the spotlight, someone can vanish without a trace.